sometimes it's slapped in the face. Sometimes it's the paddle. Like up in detention, they usually give you the paddle before they slap you.
When they hit you, they make sure it hurts. They try to.
There is not enough punishment. There are not enough juvenile delinquents being committed.
When you're in an institution without girls, and there's no males around, I mean, a lot of girls have high sex. It's nothing to see two girls holding hands going down the hall or something like that.
Well, if they're hipped on the drug scene, they can get maybe a couple of tabs of acid or something.
You know, the schools have failed. The juvenile authorities have failed. The police have failed. The psychiatrists, the social workers, the preachers, everybody has failed.
I landed up in jail. Well, all I did, I cried because I was so scared. I stayed back from everybody else.
If people have enough money, of course, they never go to jail. You know that. Jail is for poor people. Jails are for black people. And jails are for children.
Place don't help you, and it just keeps you away from home, that's it.
Beyond any question, the youngsters who are there deserve to be there.
I ain't planning on going to prison.
Think it might happen?
Yeah, okay.
More of our children are in trouble today than ever before. Twice as many, in fact, as 10 years ago. An estimated 1 million children will be arrested this year and begin a journey through a system of justice from which many will never emerge. A system run by a special set of rules, special because they apply only to children. There are whole categories of crimes that are crimes only for children. Crimes like running away from home, truancy, being out too late at night. Children are not given the benefit of a trial to deal with these crimes. They get a hearing, which can send them away to institutions where they remain until the authorities feel they are ready to leave, or until enough time has passed so that they are legally no longer children. Last year, 162,000 of our nation's children were locked in institutions that most of us have heard of, but few of us have ever seen. But recent stories are beginning to force the public to pay attention to these places. In Iowa, a girl is thrown into jail because she runs away to get married. She hangs herself. She is 16 years old. In a children's detention center in New York, 4 children attempt suicide within 10 days. In Missouri, a 17-year-old is homosexually assaulted and kicked to death by jail cellmates. Another 17-year-old is murdered in a Miami jail. NBC News spent the last 7 months investigating our system of juvenile justice. We visited juvenile courts, detention centers, and reform schools across the nation. We decided to let the children in the system tell you their own stories, stories we verified with the juvenile authorities. We would like you to remember 2 facts as you listen to them. Half the children in America who are deprived of their liberty and sent to correctional institutions have done nothing that would have been a crime for an adult. And half the children in those institutions will come back to them, having committed a more serious crime. We chose 3 areas of the country to examine closely. Tonight, we present our results. Chicago will soon boast a building a mile high. Its crime rate is also sky high, rising 14 times faster than its population in the last 10 years. Cook County Jail, copied from a 19th century French prison, was built to hold 1,300 people. It now holds almost twice that number. 300 are juveniles, accused of serious crimes. None of them has been convicted. Some have remained behind these bars as long as 2 years, getting a glimpse of their parents only on infrequent visiting days. Juveniles in Cook County Jail are certain to be poor and almost certain to be black. They are crowded into prison just as they were crowded in Chicago's crime-ridden ghettos. They have, in fact, exchanged one ghetto for another. Producer Martin Carr spoke with a 14-year-old prisoner about life in jail.
How long have you been here?
4 months, going on 5.
5 months?
Mm-hmm.
That's a long time.
Up in here it is. Time passed slow.
Time passed slowly?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever get to meet anybody that's committed serious crime?
Yes.
Like what?
Johnny Boy.
Mm-hmm.
I met him.
What'd you talk about?
Well, why he do it, what he do it for a reputation, he said.
What does it make you think about?
Me? Well, I figure if I had a big reputation like that, I would be mighty important.
You think he's mighty important?
Yes.
What did he do?
Killed a policeman.
Killed a policeman? And that made him important?
Yes. I guess so.
You know, a lot of people, and you in particular, feel that you see 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, and 16-year-olds in jails, and you say, oh my, what a shame. They shouldn't be in here. Yet they're victims. The victims of the crimes they have committed shouldn't be in the graveyards either. You know, this is the one thing that disturbs me. Nobody is concerned about victims. You know, the hardships that these kids have reaped upon people in the communities. You know, you're no less dead, whether you killed by a 14-year-old or by a 40-year-old. And this is mostly what they're in here for, murder.
Nonetheless, Mr. Moore, I think you're making a prejudgment. I found over and over and over again in kids that I talked to that they are awaiting trial.
For murder.
In some instances, for murder.
In most instances, you found.
Isn't this punishment before conviction?
No. The law states that there are some crimes that there are no bail for. Would you let them out to go out and kill again?
I was talking to a young man here in the jail yesterday, not incidentally charged with murder. And he said while he was here, he had the chance to meet and get to know somebody who was charged with murder. Don't you think that this young man who was talking to me has been hurt?
If he's 14-year-old and he's in jail, he's in here for charge being raping a white woman. You don't come to jail at 14 for being charged with raping a black woman.
Mr. Moore, how does this make you feel?
Well, if he's here for about, you know, somebody was raped, they had probable cause. Now, I think that what happens in this situation, that he should have been, I didn't bring him here before, I'm just a custodian of men. But had he raped somebody related to me, I would want him here.
Nonetheless, he is only charged with rape, and you run this institution, Mr. Moore.
I
have
have 1,700 men out of 2,000 charged with something. I don't make the laws. I don't enforce them. I'm just here as a custodian of men.
Our investigation of the juvenile justice system led us, surprisingly, to a mental institution, Elgin State Mental Hospital in a suburb of Chicago. About 5% of the children handled by Cook County's juvenile courts land in mental institutions. Elgin State Hospital has set up a special unit to handle some of these children. They are not described by the hospital as emotionally disturbed or mentally ill. They are called socially deprived. Producer Martin Carr asked the clinical director of the hospital's adolescent division, Dr. Enrique Vicioso, what kind of children are assigned to this special unit.
They are not mentally ill. They are social deprived
individual.
Socially deprived.
Socially deprived, who can be handled elsewhere.
What does socially deprived mean?
Socially deprived is that individual who doesn't have the opportunity to have a father or a mother or a person that more or less is an authority figure, that he may be able to learn some kind of values, social and moral value.
Legal aid attorney Patrick Murphy represents some of the children in this hospital.
I can think of two cases, for instance, involving two children, one from an area called Uptown here in Chicago, which is primarily a white Appalachian area, and another from the West Side ghetto, black ghetto. They both ended up at the Elgin State Hospital. Recently, they were both caught in consenting homosexual conduct, they both being about 13 now. Now, it may be wrong to do this, it may not be. I'm just a lawyer, I can't make moral judgments. However, the people at the hospital did, and they bound them to their beds for a period of 77.5 hours. They tied their hands and their feet to the bedpost and spread-eagled them to the beds in such a position that the boys could only move their hands about 3 or 4 inches in each direction. They were allowed up only to shower in 77.5 hours.
We are not using punishment over here. We are using a multiplicity of treatment in order to change the behavior of the person.
Nonetheless, tying a child to a bed for 77 hours sounds to me like punishment.
Okay. Well, this is a matter of opinion. We are trying to provide here in this institution to some of the kids some kind of therapeutical behavior modification and some kind of disciplinary approach to the patient.
In other words, tying a child to a bed for 77 hours does not create any physical pain.
This kind of kid, no.
And
Dr. Marvin Schwartz, consultant in child psychiatry to the Cook County court system, disagrees with this kind of treatment. He feels it hurts children.
When you tie someone to a bed like one wouldn't tie a dog, but, you know, like a dog, you see, for 72 hours without any, you know, real reasons, and put that person in the middle of a room to display, this person of limited abilities, this person with terrible difficulties adjustment, who has confused ideas of himself, who has confused self-concepts to begin with, ends up feeling more self-depreciated, right? More confused, more lost, and more of a nothing in our world.
In addition, I understand, to tying these boys to the bed for 77 hours, they received intramuscular injections of some medication. And intramuscular injections is particularly painful, so that added to the punishment.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily intramuscular injection is painful. You may say, for instance, when the needle goes inside, all right, can create some kind of painful sensation. But our goal when you give medication with a patient, especially intramuscular, is because we want the medication to work as fast as possible so the behavior can be modified.
The concern of the attorneys in this case, and my concern, is that we don't see any evidence that these drugs were being used to treat an acute situation. It was being used to quiet people down totally, namely as a means of control.
So could there be a reason to give it intramuscularly?
Yes, it hurts.
Once we got involved in the case, we found out we were, the 77.5 hours was child's play. One of the third plaintiff, a girl, was tied to her bed for 7 consecutive days for slapping a matron. Certainly, if the girl had slapped her mother, and her mother had tied her to her bed, as these people did, for 7 consecutive days, we would be prosecuting that mother for criminal neglect, and she would be in the front page of every newspaper in the state.
Well, in the case of this girl, tying her for 7 days, I repeat again, I don't think that it's a matter of really punishment. Everybody tried to really help this girl to modify that behavior, but unfortunately, this girl has not been kept enough in a place long enough so she may be able to learn about that. As a matter of fact,
that's not her fault.
It's not her fault.
The community sets up institutions with limited budgets, with poorly trained staff, with poorly trained supervision, places upon these institutions the problems which are really the problems of the community, which the community does not want to deal with, places into these institutions people who are, in a way, are victims because we have made them what they are, and then says to this institution, not only does it say now, hold these people in so that the rest of us can pretend they don't exist and are not here. But it says relieve our guilt and pretend you're treating them. The shocking thing is not these children and not Elgin State. The shocking thing is that this is how our society deals with these things universally.
Many juvenile institutions refused to open their doors to NBC News. They claimed they were protecting the children. But Indiana Corrections Commissioner Robert Heine allowed us to film in Indiana Boys School and Indiana Girls School, hoping that public awareness of their problems might stimulate change. Indiana Boys School, alma mater of Charles Manson, is the 6th largest in the nation. To send a boy there costs the state and local governments $8,000 a year, twice as much as it costs to send a boy to Harvard. More than half the children in the Indiana schools have been committed for specifically juvenile crimes. Crimes like running away from home, breaking curfew, or being hard to handle. A major study by New York criminologists tells us that if present laws were strictly enforced, 99% of all children would be locked away. The next 6 children are serving time for juvenile crimes. The accuracy of their statements has been checked with Indiana authorities.
Why are you here at Indiana State Boys School?
I snuck into a drive-in in the trunk of a car, and there were X-rated movies, you know, for 18 or over. And so I guess they just kind of got me for that mostly and put me down here. Because when I was at the police station, my mom said, you know, she was mad at me. She said, well, just keep him and do what you want with him. And that's what started it. And then they just put me down here for that, really.
How long have you been here this time?
4 months.
4 months at Indiana Girls School.
Right.
How did you get here?
I was in the orphanage in '68. At first, I wasn't too sure of why I was there, because, you know, they gave me a couple reasons, because truancy, and then they said my parents didn't want me. Then later on, when I found out that it was because my parents didn't want me, and they just, you know, signed me over to the state, I felt terrible. Well, I couldn't stay there, and that's why I ran twice.
After you ran away from the orphanage the second time, you ended up in jail, you were telling me. What was it like in jail?
There were prostitutes, and then...
Did you know about that?
Yeah, they had talked about it. And then there were 2, I think, that was in there for murder. And it really was a scary feeling to be around such people.
Well, when I was 4 was when I got taken away from my parents, and then some Williamses adopted me. And I lived with them until I was 11, and then I went to some other people. And I lived there for 5 years, and then I went to another family and lived with them for a while, and then another family and lived with them for a while. And then I got sent up here.
Where'd you like it the best?
Well, I lived in Greensburg. That was the best place I was in.
Why did you like it there?
I could talk to them, and they really cared about me. They'd get me out of trouble if it wasn't my fault. I mean, I was good at getting in trouble. And when I didn't do something, then I told them that I didn't do it, and they believed me. They'd do their best to get me out of it. I mean, they just really cared.
This is a school for what?
Juveniles.
What kind of juveniles?
Delinquents.
Delinquents?
Delinquents.
Do you think you're a juvenile delinquent?
I guess so, or I wouldn't be up here right now.
Do you know what Indiana Boys School is for? What kind of boys are here?
That's supposedly for juvenile delinquents.
For juvenile delinquents?
Yes, sir.
You were sent up here because you broke curfew?
Yes.
What time is curfew where you live?
11 o'clock.
11 o'clock? And you were out later than that?
Yes, sir.
You think you'll ever get in trouble again?
Not after being up here.
Not after being up here?
No.
Why?
When you get out, people's gonna be knowing that you was sentenced to boys' school. They aren't gonna be wanting their children around you, figuring that there might be a bad influence on them.
They can't love you in a place like this. I mean, they're just too 8 hours a day just to tell you what to do, and then they go home. I mean, you know, they may care for you, but not the way a mother and a father would.
How about your friends your age here? Do you have any?
Up here, when you get too close to a girl, they automatically think you're casing.
Casing?
That's when two girls go together.
Is there much of this here?
There's a lot of it.
Does it hurt any girls?
In a way, yes. Well, you can get hurt. I mean, not just emotionally or mentally, physically also. I mean, they beat up on you and beat you over the head and slam your head up against the wall and everything, but,
If you resist, is that it?
yes.
Do the counselors know about this?
Yes, but there's nothing they can really do.
So what happens to a girl who comes in here kind of innocent and inexperienced?
She doesn't go out so innocent and inexperienced. Because she learns a lot of things up here.
What do you think causes a problem like homosexuality in an institution like this?
Well, I think for the fact that you've got all girls, or boys, or what have you, and then the fact that we have adolescents, or the period of 13 through 18, where they're naturally curious about these kind of things.
What happens to a young girl who comes here?
I think they know a lot more about the bad things when they go out.
Did you learn things you didn't know before?
Yes, sir.
I understand that you ran away a little while ago. What happened?
I got put in Cottage 8 when I came back.
What's Cottage 8?
It's maximum security.
What's that like?
Well, it's a small room, and you're locked in there about 23 hours a day. It's real drabby, and it's got writings all over the wall, and you sleep on a mattress on the floor.
What does it feel like after you've been there a week?
It's like you sort of withdraw from the rest of the world, like some of the other girls, and I didn't even care after I was there a week. It was like you're there and you're never going to get out.
Why are you in here in a room with a thick door, no bed, no furniture?
Because I ran.
What does it feel like to be in a room like this?
I don't know, at times it just seems like the whole place is gonna fall in on me. And the only thing that I can do to protect myself would be get out and take off again.
How about drugs? Drugs is one of your problems. Maybe it's a good idea for you to be in a place like this, keep you away from it. You think it does?
I had some H here.
Some heroin?
Yes, sir.
Did you shoot it up yet?
Yes.
Which is it easier to get around here, heroin or acid?
Well, I don't know with the other girls, but to me, I think I could get anything I wanted. I mean, in the drug line.
Why the paper plates and the paper cups and the wooden spoon?
They could file maybe their spoons or something down and make a sharp object and kind of hurt the house mothers, or hurt ourselves by breaking it, maybe slashing our wrist or something like this.
Did you ever hear of that happening?
Yeah.
Girls attempting suicide?
Yeah. There's been only one girl that I know of that has died here in Cottage 8.
You knew her?
I didn't know her personally, no.
You just heard about it?
Yes. She hung herself.
Charles Manson ran from Indiana Boys School 5 times. At least 30 boys run from here every month. Most of them run home.
Why did you run away?
Well, I just didn't like it up here.
Where did you run to?
I ran to home.
To your mother?
Yes.
What happened to you when you got back?
I was sent to the detention.
What's that?
It's a small room, about 12 foot long and about 6 foot, or about 8 foot wide. It's got a bed in it, a toilet and a sink off to the side of it. A little window in the back of the room with a big metal door.
Is that what they mean with a cage?
Yes.
Why do you think they call it the cage?
Well, it's like one.
How long were you in the cage?
For 11 days.
What's it like being in a cage for 11 days?
Well, after you get done climbing the walls, you just lay down for the rest of the day.
What do you mean after you get done climbing the walls?
Well, just trying to get out, I reckon. I got claustrophobia. I can't stand to be put in one of them rooms for too long.
But you were there for a long time.
Yeah.
We feel that there is a need for a kid to be placed in a unit like this simply to have control of the institution or control of the situation. It is not ideal, but it's the same old numbers game. Too many boys for too short a time.
Why is it necessary to put shackles on a boy? And I refer to a sign saying there is no screen around, do not use without shackles. How should I understand something like that?
The only time a shackle is used on a boy is that if there is a malfunction in the facility where he could escape, or if a boy has a claustrophobia problem, and the psychologist recommends that the door to the unit be left open, and so a shackle is used.
Do you always get enough to eat here?
Not all the time.
What happens when you get on the end of the line?
Well, you get about half of what everyone else gets. Sometimes not even half.
Sometimes not even half. So you walk around hungry?
Well, that's what you have to do, and just hope you can get up towards the middle of the line next meal.
And if you were at the end?
Then you didn't get nothing.
I've heard from several boys I talk to here, there's sometimes an Oliver Twist situation. They don't get enough to eat or they don't get any food at all. How can you explain that?
Well, this is a problem that does exist in say, a cottage that has a large number of boys. If the supervisor does not supervise adequately, it could be that the boy at the end of the line will come up with less food than the one that began.
Mm-hmm. Who might this cottage supervisor be?
The cottage supervisors may have worked in industry, may have worked in a factory, may have been truck drivers, may have been people from all forms of life. They may have been former salesmen, people like this. And of course, their work before they came to us was totally different. So we are shackled with the problem of training them to handle and remold lives, young lives.
A little while ago, you were telling me that you ought to be on your knees now. What do you mean?
Well, you get on your hands and knees with a shine rag, a little rag, and shine the floor.
How long?
Well, sometimes you stay on there for a couple days. It's according to how bad the supervisor thinks it is that what you did.
What did you do?
I was sitting right beside a bench that was supposed to be off limits.
You were sitting next to an off-limits bench. What happens to your knees when you stay on the floor that long?
Well, you get big blisters on them.
You've had other kinds of punishment too, haven't you? How about the board?
No, I've never had that except over at school once, and that was for when I spilled some varnish on the floor.
You got the board once?
Yes.
What does getting the board once mean? They only hit you once?
Well, they hit you 3 times, but it's only one time that you get it.
Who hit you?
The principal, Mr. Kramer.
For spilling varnish. What does it feel like to be hit 3 times with the board?
Well, it hurts. It's not real bad, you know, but...
Can you sit down that evening?
Yeah. That's Mr. Kramer's sort of an old man. He can't hit quite as hard as some of the other security men that regularly give it to you in the company.
That regularly give it to you in the company? What's the worst punishment you've seen, really seen with your own eyes around here?
Where you get 3 with a board, and if you cry...
You get 3 with a board. In other words, you get whacked 3 times.
If you cry or anything, you get 3 more. And while you're doing 75 push-ups, if you mess up one time...
In addition to being whacked with the board, you have to do 75?
75 push-ups. And if you mess up with 75 push-ups on any of them, then you have to get the board again
You have to get the board again.
And do your 75 over.
The paddle that is used is kept in this office and only approved by me as superintendent.
Do you think it's possible that cottage supervisors often resort to certain disciplinary measures just because it makes their job easier?
Yes, and this is part of the problem of a large institution. We find that the supervision of staff is very difficult.
Uh-huh. I understand that in the past, flogging was an official disciplinary measure here.
I would say that it's been many, many, many years since they've had what most people in the field call flogging. There was a leather strap used to spank boys. We have taken that out of our program.
How long ago?
It's been more than a year ago.
Why might corporal punishment be necessary at an institution like this?
It's necessary here simply because we have boys a short time and we have too many boys.
About how many boys that are here now really don't belong here?
I think the number is quite high. 55 to 70% could be handled in other settings.
How many boys return here? What's the rate of return?
Our return rate runs between 40 and 50%.
About half the boys that are here now will return here. Doesn't that give you a sense of failure, that you're not accomplishing what you'd like to accomplish?
Very much so.
Do you think you're doing any harm?
We're doing a lot of harm.
Authorities across the nation agree harm is being done. Yet judges across the nation continue to sentence the majority of children to juvenile training schools similar to the ones in Indiana. Judge Horace B. Holmes is one exception. As the presiding juvenile court judge of Boulder, Colorado, he tells us why, whenever possible, he prefers to keep a child within the community.
The best place a youngster can be is at home. There is no place better than home for a youngster.
Your motto is attention, not detention.
That's right.
What does that really mean?
It means that we've got to look at kids and try to figure out what's going on and what's bothering them and what we can do to correct their activities, what we can do to correct the situation that has caused them to be this way. And you don't get it by locking them up someplace, either in jail here or in a state institution, because this isn't going to solve it.
Why not?
Because when they come out of a state institution, no matter how good it is that they come, strangely enough, kids come home again.
Why are walls and bars necessarily bad for a child who may be in trouble?
Maybe for some youngsters it's not bad. Maybe the youngster that can't live except confined, but I think many of them don't need this. That this is a way of getting rid of our problems. We've done it in the mental health. We've housed our mental health patients in sort of dungeons, and now we're getting better and getting them out and back into the community where they should be. The mental health patients should be with us. Everybody we don't like, we can't get rid of. We have to live with them. And this is what the kids are saying, too. They say we've got to live with one another. If we'll listen to them, they will learn something.
El Paso, Texas likes to call itself the All-America City. The motto is on police cars, hotel doors, phone booths, almost everywhere you look. But where the rights of its children are concerned, El Paso is hardly all-American. Rights guaranteed all-Americans by state and federal law have systematically been denied. After careful investigation, NBC News was able to document many instances of children sent away to state correctional schools without the advice of a lawyer or a hearing before a judge. We talked to Ira Workman and his son Philip, who had spent 9 months at the Gatesville School for Boys.
Philip, you were up at Gatesville, right?
Right.
How come? What'd you do?
Problems at home and couldn't get along. Ran away from home quite a few times.
Mr. Workman, why did you think that Gatesville would be a good idea for Philip, your son?
As I understood it, I thought it was like a regular school, that they would have people up there that would put the boy on the right track, and that was their sole responsibility. I did not approve of the type of disciplinary action that was given there.
Philip, you were there. You tell me about it.
They would maybe want to get us on our feet, you know, sit us down, take our shoes and socks off. And they'd have leather straps mostly, or sometimes a stick.
Mm-hmm. And you'd be sitting on the floor with bare feet?
With bare feet.
And then what happened?
And he'd hit you in the arch of your foot, because they say that's the tenderest part.
How many times would he hit you there?
Oh, sometimes up to 10 times.
Did it hurt?
Yes, it really hurts. It's hard to stand, really, when they get done.
Did you ever cry?
Oh, I cried the first time.
You didn't have to send him in front of a judge in order to send him to Gatesville, is that it?
No. All I had to do was sign a paper that, I understand that the paper now that I signed went before a judge. Now that's the best of my knowledge.
Did you try talking to a lawyer? Did a lawyer come down and discuss this with you?
No, I didn't talk to any lawyer.
Nobody suggested that you ought to talk to a lawyer or anything?
I cannot remember any suggestion as to talking to a lawyer.
How about you, Philip? Did you talk to a lawyer at that time?
Oh, no.
I was told by a number of the juveniles that I spoke to that they, in fact, had been sent to the Texas Youth Council facilities without having had a hearing. They were now returned, and I had been speaking to them.
Is that what an agreed judgment means?
An agreed judgment is an agreement by the parents with the chief probation officer of El Paso County, the man who runs the detention home, agreeing to the fact the child is a delinquent without any sort of consent by the child, and then it is then taken to the judge, and without a hearing, the child is sent to one of the Texas Youth Council facilities.
I take that this is against the law, both here in Texas and against the law of the nation.
I find it completely against the law. I can find no justification in any law in the United States for this procedure.
About how many cases of agreed judgments have come to your attention, directly or indirectly?
About 50.
As a lawyer, funded by the OEO, is there anything that you can do to get these children out?
For the majority of them, there's nothing I can do.
Why is this the case?
Because apparently these agreed judgments are cases where the parents wanted their children sent away to some sort of prison.
Where is Emily right now?
Brownwood.
Emily's at Brownwood. What is Brownwood, Mrs. Garrison?
The state home and school for girls.
Did anybody explain to you at the time that your daughter was entitled to a hearing, to a lawyer?
I don't think it was mentioned, but I at least got the impression that if we did go before a judge, she may be put away for a definite and longer time than if I just signed the papers and let her go and left it open for a while.
In other words, you were frightened that if she had a hearing, it would be worse.
Yes.
So you decided against the hearing, and you signed an agreed judgment.
I don't know what I signed.
Concerned about agreed judgments, Frank Walker, assistant county attorney during our investigation, discussed the matter with the juvenile judge.
I told him that I didn't know they existed, I didn't believe they existed, and I found that they did exist, and that was being done.
When you mean the agreed judgments, you found
yes,
out?
Yes,
And
we discussed it no further than that.
And the judge admitted to the agreed judgments?
Yes, he did admit to it.
NBC News requested an interview with juvenile judge Edwin Berliner, but Judge Berliner refused to be interviewed. Nor were we permitted to talk to any of the children held in Gatesville or Gainesville on agreed judgments. In fact, the Texas Youth Council refused to let NBC film in any of its facilities. We were, however, able to talk with 15-year-old Ricky Reed the night he returned home after spending 8.5 months at the Gatesville School for Boys.
Did you get anything out of your 8.5 months at Gatesville?
Yeah. Talked to a lot of people who've been up there for armed robbery and burglary and car theft and all different kinds of things.
You learned very much?
I learned quite a bit.
Did you like it? What bothered you?
The supervisor. He'd come by, you know, and he'd jump on you for looking at him wrong or for getting
What do you mean
up.
he'd jump on you?
He'd beat the hell out of you. I've seen a boy get picked up by a man weighing close to 300 pounds thrown against a wall, and the man just sit there stepping on his stomach, kicking him in the legs, and head and everywhere. I seen that head. I seen a man pull the table leg off the table and beat a boy with it.
Before you were sent to Gatesville, you were in the detention home for 2 weeks. What was that like?
You locked up. I didn't have nobody to talk to. I was in a room by myself. I didn't have anything to do with sit on my bunk. No mattresses on the bunk. Rats running around, spiders and everything else. The place smells. Well, after about 4 or 5 days, thought I was losing my mind. So nobody talked to or anything. It was pretty bad. I cut my wrist, and man, he come by the door. He looked down, he saw me, so he walked back down into the hall and started bleeding pretty bad there. And then he walked back in and he said, he said something like, he said, you dirty, he said, you dirty gringo and all this stuff. He says, I'll let you bleed to death.
I've heard complaints from people here in El Paso. You've probably heard them yourself. They would rather be in Gatesville or Gainesville than in the detention home. They described it as pure hell. What do you have to say about that?
It isn't intended as a resort hotel.
What am I to think if a child says to me, I was in there for about 3 weeks and I was let out only 3 times during the day for meals. I had nobody to talk to in between. I had nothing to do. I had nothing to read. I had to sit on a bunk with no mattress on it. Should I believe him? Is he telling me the truth?
I'm not going to say. I'm going to say draw your own conclusions. Many times a child is booked in for protective custody, which is not a legal charge, but is for their protection. Later we find that the child is completely incorrigible by their own admission and by a statement from the parents. They exhibit that incorrigible behavior here too, believe you me.
How do they do that, Mr. Riley?
I might bring this in at this time. That originally was a T-shirt which one of the boys was wearing in a room. In a few hours' time, this boy removed that shirt, started unraveling and rolling the twine. That is the T-shirt in its present form.
Why do you think he did that, Mr. Riley?
More to trying to strike back at anyone, especially his parents.
Isn't it possible that the child made that ball of twine because he was bored, because he had nothing better to do?
Not necessarily. Many of them will take any action to, as they see it, get even with their parents or the guards.
How would you account for this kind of behavior on the part of children?
I would say a lot of it is due to the coddling, permissiveness of parents, permissiveness of law enforcement, of everyone concerned.
Are you able to overcome this permissiveness?
Some of it.
I've heard again and again from different people in town that many times a parent, in cooperation with you, has sent off children to either Gainesville or Gatesville or one of the other homes in Texas without the benefit of either a hearing or a lawyer, which they are entitled to under the law.
Now, this isn't true virtually. These children, these parents first, are cautioned of their rights, of the child's rights, and many times there is an attorney in the background that the child is not aware of. Later, the parents get guilt feelings, the child is resentful, and you get the answer you have had. Many of them, through this sense of guilt, will change their story to the point where they try to clear themselves.
Isn't it always an advantage for a child to have a hearing and to have a lawyer?
Again, I'm not going to go into that.
How come he's up there?
Because he wanted to get married. And he kept on running away from home, and they sent him over there because at the time, you know, we thought that was best for the boy, that he wouldn't get married. They told me there was a very nice school and a very good place for the boy.
Who is this? Who told you that?
Mr. Rayleigh. I went to talk to him, and he told me that the best thing for the boy that would be that school, because it's a good school. They have a swimming pool. They have a good teachers. They have a freedom. When I first sent him over there, Mr. Rayleigh told me that I could get him out anytime I wanted to. And I got very sick, and I want to get him furlough. And he said, not a chance.
You're sick now, aren't you, ma'am?
Yes, I've been sick for the past 2 years, I think, 2, 3 years.
What is the matter with you, do you know?
I saw the doctor yesterday. He said I got a tumor, and 2 of them said that I got cancer.
But they wouldn't let you bring him home?
They wouldn't let me bring him home. They say no. You know, when they sent him away, I figured, well, I'll go see him once or twice a week. And then I find out there was a miles away. Then I didn't even know, well, as you can see, people in our position, I didn't figure that I ever see him at all till he come home.
How far away is Gatesville?
Well, we make 14 hours in a bus. We borrow some money, you know, from a finance company to go see him on Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
But since he was
coming...
How much
money did it cost you to go and see him?
Well, so far, on back and forth, these 2 times, $250.
$250?
That's what we spent.
Do you still owe this money to the finance company?
Yes.
You're working too, aren't you?
Yes, I'm working. My husband working, and I have to find another job too to help me to pay this money.
You went over to Gatesville?
I went to Gatesville, and I found him beat up.
You found your son beat up?
He got a big bruise on his head. He was terrified. He wasn't afraid. When anybody talked to him or get near him, he just bend his head and stay like that, and he don't answer.
What are you going to say to your son when he comes home?
I'm going to tell him I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm going to try to explain to him what did I done and try to make up for what I done.
Do you think you can make up?
He's a good boy. He got a good heart. And we raised them as, you know, as good as we can. We got a big family, you know. We fight and we made up right away. We never stay mad at each other. And we raised the boys that way. I think he forgive me. I hope, at least. Because it's a lot to forgive, you know. Send a boy, 15-year-old boy, to hell like that. I don't think it's... If I were him, you know, on my side, I think it took me a long time to forgive my family.
In El Paso, juvenile judge Edwin Berliner has stopped the practice of agreed judgments. Since we filmed, several of the children sent to Texas Youth Council facilities in this way have been released. Nonetheless, many of them remain, sent away by a court which clearly feels that children, simply because they are children, are not entitled to full protection under the law. The Texas Youth Council, when it learned of our investigation, refused NBC News access to any of its institutions, with or without a camera. It was therefore impossible to document the many reports of brutality given to us by parents and children. However, State Senator Donald Kennard tells us that physical mistreatment is a fact of life for children in these institutions. State Representative Curtis M. Graves tells us that nearly 200 parents and juveniles have complained to him of brutality at the Gatesville School for Boys. He has personally verified this brutality, in one case by finding blood on the wall of a cell where a child had recently been beaten. Brutality of this sort goes on every day in children's institutions across the nation, and will go on unless we as Americans see that it is stopped. Solitary confinement also must be stopped. No child should be forced to remain days on end in a locked room. It can only be an act of cruel and unnecessary punishment. But more basic than this, we must stop the practice of sending children away to these institutions, where any child is condemned to be a faceless individual surrounded by a staff unable to help him, however real the desire. Alternatives to large institutions are succeeding in several communities, such as Boulder, Colorado. Children in trouble now remain within those communities, in foster homes and small residences. Some children must be locked away because of the seriousness of their crimes. But most children are sent away to the wrong places for the wrong reasons. They have broken laws which do not exist for adults. These laws, as they are now written, should not exist for children either. For under these laws, children are treated as criminals for acts that should not be considered crimes at all. We can expect children to respect the law only if we show them the respect and care that law and common sense require. This is not the case now. What is the case now cannot be permitted to continue.